Whew. Who saw Stutz? So if you haven't seen Stutz, it's with Jonah Hill and his psychotherapist who he's been seeing for 5 years, and he basically crammed 5 years of psychotherapy into a 2-hour documentary, and it's pretty amazing. And so I named this the Stutz of communication. You're only going to understand this if you saw Stutz, but there's something that he calls Part X. And what Part X is like the evil voice out there that basically says, you can't do this or you can't do that. You're not good enough for this, you're not good enough for that. And as part of my work with Liz over the last year, I found that I had a Part X of something that I've dealt with in my life since I was 19 years old, and I worked with her and with Dr. Kelly to address that Part X. And that's and we're going to go into that, and that's why we called it the Stutz of communication. So this is also from the Stutz. If you remember the bead of pearls, remember the bead of pearls? It's yeah. So tonight is going to be one more bead of pearls that we're going to put on. Hopefully it won't be too big of a turd in it. And so Liz and I have worked together. She's working with about 7 other Go Bros, and it's been life-changing for me. And with that, I'll take it over. Welcome, Liz.
Wow, that's quite an introduction. Hopefully I meet up to those expectations. Well, first, I just want to clarify some stuff because I am a communication coach, and Aaron already laid out the foundation. I might say something, but I'm not married to, I don't know, I feel like there was a...
Aaron said her wife.
Yeah, I don't have a wife or husband, so I was like, no wife, and then it's... Yeah, but you didn't say...
Well, that's not fucking what you said, dude. You
right?
said her
you
wife.
You said her wife. I was like, that's a check. I didn't have a wife. So, just wanted to clarify that. I was like, oh, new information on the Jahari Window I didn't know about.
I think you're gay, so...
Not that I care, but
Not that that's bad or anything.
Of course not.
It's just,
but,
and
then the
wrong.
last
It was
name.
Incorrect.
Coleman. Yeah. Anyway.
And he got his last name wrong, too.
Oh, yeah,
but
it's okay.
It was a good intro, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah. It was heartfelt, and I actually felt it. And before we really get started, too, I just want to say express gratitude, right? Because one of the things that we've talked about in our coaching sessions is that as human beings, when we're interacting with one another, we can't help but influence one another. So I don't care if you're a coach or a business partner or what your role is. If you're open to genuinely connecting with another human being, there's a lot of power in that. And so I know you all know Pat probably even better than I do, or some of you don't know him as well as I do, but it's really an honor to be here and to be part of this journey. I don't know if that's me or not. So thank you for that
My pleasure.
gift. Yeah, so let's get started.
Let's get into it. So we're going to teach you guys some tools.
Yeah.
These are Liz's tools of communication. And the idea is you're going to leave here with some really solid, tactical tools to become better communicators for your wives, your kids, your employees, everybody in your world. Basically what Liz has enabled me to do, for a room full of guys, she's basically given me feminine energy, or she's unleashed the feminine energy that I've already had and was afraid to use. And we'll talk more about that now.
Yeah, I like that. So just to let you know, I snap. That's my way of saying, like, oh, that I'm a snapper. So I just thought I'd put that out, what that exactly means. So, and then, as I already mentioned, my background really is in education and academia. So I've been a professor. I'm a tenure-track professor at a college in Sacramento, not too far away here. And so I teach communication courses. And then also my consulting, like the pandemic kind of changed all of our businesses in different ways. And so coaching has been something that's really natural and has been a good fit too. So you're going to get, I share all that because you're going to get a little bit of the teacher in me, right? A little bit of background as far as theories and some of the concepts that I use in the coaching. And we'll just make it as interactive as possible. All right. So we've done a lot of work together in the last year, and one of the concepts, lots we've gone over, but one of the ones we thought we would share with everyone tonight is a concept, it's called the Jahari Window. And this Jahari Window is not my invention. I'll give credit where credit's due. It's two psychologists, actually, that developed it in 1955, and their names were Joseph Lift and Harry Ingram. And in this, they had 4 quadrants. So they say every individual is like, there's a window into every individual, and there's 4 quadrants. This first quadrant is that open window. So this is what's known to me and known to others. So known about me, I know it about myself, and then other people know it about me. So I guess we'll act that out. What do you know about me now? You know I'm not married, is that
Yeah. You're not married. You don't have a wife. I know that Liz has 2 boys. I know both of her boys are not on social media, and they're teenagers, which is phenomenal, I think, is a very interesting fact. She loves to hike, and she's a professor, and she has a lot of students, and she's very sought after for her classes, and that's what I know.
Yeah, and so your open window, the things I've learned about you over the last year are you're an amazing husband. You love your wife very much. You're devoted to your children. You have 2 amazing daughters that you love dearly. You also enjoy hiking. You're committed to this group of GoBundance and helping to better yourself and better the world too through that. So that's kind of an example of your open window pane, right? We know that about each other. But then the researchers would also say we have 3 other panes that we need to evaluate. And in this, we'll be able to have like more self-awareness and more connection with other people. So the second window pane is the blind spot. And so the blind spot are things that others know about us, but we don't necessarily know about ourselves. So an example of that might be, well, we've talked about this with Pat. I asked if it was okay to share. Sometimes in our coaching sessions, Pat, when I tell him something that you're thinking about, your body language kind of starts to look around a little bit like, I'm not sure what I think about that, right? So he's like, his eyes start darting back and forth. And so that's stuff I know, but then I would ask about feedback. So it wasn't necessarily something Pat knew.
That's the hardest one, too. Not the hardest one, but the one that hurts the most, the one that is emotionally... It hurts, and you're going to find out why. We're going to talk about later, like how she figured out what my blind spots were. She actually interviewed people in my life, and including my kids, and they said some shit about me that was very hard to hear. Like, you know, it's like I don't want to be the reason that they're seeing a therapist when they're 35, because their dad was a dick, you know. So that was very, very... eye-opening for me, and we've been working very hard on fixing the blind spots.
Yeah, it is tough work. And then this third quadrant is the unknown. Things that we don't know, I don't know about myself, and Pat doesn't know about me, you know. So for me, an example of this is when the pandemic happened, I was on ground teaching face-to-face courses, and so having to make that transition to teaching online. I did not sign up to be an online instructor. I was terrified. I was like, oh gosh, this is like technology. I have to create all these courses. So that's an unknown, but it's actually turned out the fears that I had around that have, you know, I'm a better professor because of it. I'm a better coach, and it's opened up opportunities that wouldn't have been there. So anyway, that was unknown. And the last one is the facade. So the facade is, you know, exactly what it sounds like. Those hidden parts of ourselves that we know about ourselves. Right? And so there's information we know about ourselves, but we don't necessarily share with other people. And so what these researchers said, we'll show you, and then we're going to talk specifically about Pat and make it more interactive. The goal of this in the research, we see that expanding your Jahari window, expanding that window, what it does is a couple things. It helps with your own self-awareness, right? It helps you identify how, you know, your own communication style and how it shows up. Being bold and direct is awesome sometimes in a business negotiation, but it doesn't necessarily work so well when you go home to your wife. right? And so we need to figure out, like, effective communicators go, how am I showing up and what's the role, who's the target audience? And that open window, the more we know ourselves, it opens it up. And we see the research shows, psychological, physical benefits, health benefits. There's all kinds of research on why it's so important for us to really open up that window. And the ways that we did it, and this is what we're going to show the techniques. So when we want to reduce the blind spot, the way we do it is by getting feedback from other people. The way that we reduce the unknown is by trying something new. And then the way that we reduce our facade or our hidden area is to self-disclose. And so we're going to do a little bit of that right now. Okay, Pat, when I first talked to you about the Jahari window, what did you kind of, how, we tried to do like a visual illustration of like, how do you think your Jahari windows is? So you want to talk about that a little?
So I think that when I was, let's just pick a number, 20 years old, my Jahari window was fairly equal, right? The 4 squares were equal. And I became a real estate agent at 21 years old, and I started to see that the competition was pretty fierce in my market, and that the stronger that I looked and appeared, and this is why real estate agents go out and buy Mercedes or whatever and pull up to a listing appointment in Mercedes, even though there's a $1,200 payment, is because they're creating that facade. Their facade is getting bigger, right? They could be broke, but they're, sporting a Benz, right? But they have to, in order to win the listing. So as I got more competitive in sales, my Jahari window, the open window, shrunk, right? Because I didn't want people to know a lot about me because they would use it against me. You know what I mean? Like, same reason you don't want a video of you, doing a beer bong on YouTube because someone might, from your company or whatever, you're like, I don't want anybody to know that shit. Delete it, right? Like, so, like, my Jahari window, my open area shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And I think over time also my, when we started GoBundance, it was, I don't know, it's just a different time in life, and we're trying to grow it, and we were very sensitive, I think, to how authentic we're going to be, right? I'm speaking for myself. And so anyways, my window up there in the top left got smaller, not bigger, as I made more money and as I got more successful and I became more prominent and was on television. I used to run TV commercials, and I used to, stand up, and I wrote a book, and then I went on speaking tour, and, you can't, when you're doing that stuff, you're building a smaller window, not a bigger window. And then I basically came to a point about 2 years ago or so where I made a conscious decision that it was time to expand my Jahari window rather than shrinking it all these years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I came to Liz and I came to Dr. Kelly, and together we've been working on making it bigger, and it is bigger.
Yeah, and so I think we kind of did a visual illustration to show Pat's window, like when we started, because we're going to see some of the
progression. There's my big facade. I was a false prophet.
But we're gonna shrink that window a little bit and see what, and more importantly, not just shrink the window, right? See what benefits have come, right? So our conversation will be like, hey, what are the benefits that have come out of shrinking this window? Okay, so first we're gonna go kind of clockwise in this Jahari window. The first window pane that we're gonna look at are those blind spots. So tell them a little bit about the work we did to reduce that blind spot.
So she asked for 5 to 7 people in my life that would give me feedback about my blind spots, like where I suck at communication. And she sent them out an anonymous survey that said, let them fucking have it.
That's not what I said. That is not what I said. This is what I said. What? Oh, that's a little bit off.
So this is her. This is
the feminine
What are
energy,
the
that's not
negative
what I
traits
said.
or characteristics Pat possesses? I mean,
Okay.
you got to answer the question. You can't leave it blank, right? The whole concept, I'm paying money to find out.
Yeah.
No one's going to be like, oh, I couldn't say anything. I gave her people that would say something,
There you go. Yeah.
including my kids, my 2 daughters, who are on a DISC scale, SCs. So it's important, you know, they don't get much opportunity just because of their of how they are to come out and say something that could hurt somebody. They're not. That's not part. They, you know, they're not like us. We say shit all the time that hurts people.
Well, so Pat was generous enough to share some of his different window panes. And so I really do think it's a gift that you're willing to share some of the feedback that you got. So we're going to put up a couple things just so you can see. I asked for people to get feedback from not only their family, their interpersonal relationships, but also business partners and anyone that they think. We do kind of a little bit of identity management. We show up differently. Hopefully we show up somewhat differently with our kids than we do with other individuals. So these are some things you got back. That's not necessarily easy. Some of these things are a little bit difficult.
That's not good.
Okay. How did you feel about it when you started getting some of that?
It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that was a difficult process.
You get it all at once, too.
Well,
You don't get like one word, you know. Man, it's like just getting pummeled over and over again.
I'm a little gentler than
And
that.
if you really want to do the work, then
That's right.
you read it over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and part of
Which
the
I did.
homework that I created, so each week, again, the professor and me, we have homework. And so the homework was to print it out and to process it. A lot of times we get assessments or information at conferences or things like that, and at the time it resonates. You're like, oh yeah, that's me. And then it like sits in a drawer, you know, and you have these results and you're not actually doing it. So I'm all about behavioral change. Like, how can we take this information and actually change our behavior? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it hurt because you didn't want to hear it? Or you
Oh, that's a good question. Did it hurt because you didn't?
Well, I wanted to hear it, but I didn't know it. Yeah, I didn't know it. But it was so forceful. So let me give you an example. Cocky in arguments, overly cocky. And it made me think I should refrain from arguments altogether. Why am I arguing with somebody? Why am I arguing with my daughter? Like, this is silly. This one, see the word ouch? Thinks he's always right. I know that's from my youngest daughter, I think.
They're anonymous.
Thinks he's always right. That was terrible. I was like, I don't want to be that guy. Tries to take situations in his own hands, even when not asked for help. Who in this room does that?
No, just. Yeah.
Women don't like that especially. You don't need to save everybody. And actually, over time, this has really made me progress. Actually, the one about overly confident in arguments. Who read Solve for Happy by Mo Gadat? Any of you guys read that? It's a great book. But anyways, that inspired me to get this tattoo here, which is the gravity of the battle means nothing to those at peace. And I got that really kind of after reading Mo's book, but also after this thing about arguments. I'm like, well, why am I letting battles bring me down? That's what gravity is, right? Why am I even... These are people I love, 7 people I love, and I'm getting in arguments with them? I don't need that.
And then the feedback continued, right? Great
Okay,
question.
oh yeah, page 2. So there's some good ones here, but the bad ones are opinionated, goofy, the fuck, productive, nonstop, always right. There it is again, right? That's a double whammy. But there's some good ones there, impulsive, obsessive, The ones I kind of liked were
Trustworthy. I like that.
wanderer,
Trustworthy.
offbeat. I didn't really think of myself as offbeat. Street smart, I like that one. So some of the creative, I like that one. So some of them I liked. Some of them were like, this is good, but I didn't realize it, So,
Yeah, and we focus not on when we're reducing the blind spots. Sometimes we can be blind to the things that people appreciate about us too. And I think that's really important for us to understand, not just what are these. It's great to be in a room where people want to grow and change, but it's also nice to feel like, what am I doing right? Like, how am I showing up for other people in a really helpful way?
would you rather do questions now, Matt, or
Yeah.
at the end? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Significance why one is circled and one is underlined? They mean different things?
No, it's just the way I was thinking that day when I was journaling. I was circling, and
It's a goofy way to do it.
Well
I'm
played.
goofy. I'm offbeat.
Right. Embrace it.
I'm
I
goofy
love that.
and offbeat, but
That's-
I'm also brave
Yeah, you are brave. Very much so.
and trustworthy.
That's right. So we also talked about what are things that you appreciate about Pat, right? Authentic,
Finally, I get some peace.
holds people to their words, humor, passion, loyal, right? Helping people, funny, dependable, adventurous, generous, loving, caring, puts your family first, and trustworthy. So lots of things. And then on this one, you did the same thing, right? We kind of went through these and journaled. And what are some of the things that kind of stood out to you in this one?
Yeah, so I really like believes in you.
Yeah.
I just feel like I've had people in my life believe in me, and I've also believed in other people. I feel like that didn't believe in themselves. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in themselves as much as someone else could actually believe in them. And I've experienced relationships with people that work for me or that I know that I'm like, yo, you can do that easy. That, you know what I mean? But they're insecure about it. And so I like that someone said believes in you. That meant a lot to me. Wants to do good, that was also like someone saying, his intention is always good. Like, because intention is everything, right? I'm more of an intention guy than letter, right? Letter of the law or intention of the law. Like, I'm more like the intention. Like, if my intention is good, then don't give me shit for the way I, proposed it or whatever. So, like, you got to always question people's intentions. So I just, wants to do good, help people, funny, easygoing, honest. I like honest. Who doesn't like honest? And then it says, that's my intention. Yeah, though. It may not appear. Wants to do good. I just love role model. That's cool. Yeah, so I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we've done some of the work for the blind spot, reducing that, we kind of just got to see Pat's Jahari window change, right? So we see the expansion of that open window more, but we still have some big areas for that hidden area and the facade as well as the unknown. And so we did some work around that too, and we'll talk to you about some tips and techniques to be able to kind of reduce that. So we know feedback is one, but let's talk about the habit equation. Okay, well, maybe we'll talk about one of the ways that we developed the unknown, right, reducing the unknown. When Pat and I first started meeting, I always do much more customized and tailored coaching, and one of your goals at the time was kind of assertive appreciation, giving compliments. Mm-hmm. And then about 6 months into coaching, we'd been doing a lot of other work, and as, you might suspect, different things start to surface. Sometimes what we think our goals are different than what they actually are or, should be. But then 6 months later, I kept saying, I'm giving you this homework. I'm asking you to do your homework, and you're not doing it. Do assertive appreciations. Practice them. How many have you done each week? And so out of that was born the habit equation, right? To basically make sure that you're getting your homework done. So talk to them about why you wanted to bring in that goal of assertive appreciation or complimenting other people.
So I had some limiting beliefs, and it was a lot of it's based on my upbringing. Like my dad was absent father, and my mom. It was 5 kids. My mom was a single mom with 5 kids, all within like 5 years of each other. And so it was quite a chaotic household. There wasn't a lot of love. There wasn't a lot of teaching and like the teaching in a sense of, it was more accountability and structure than, not even that, but there wasn't a lot of sort of appreciation. There wasn't a lot of hugging. There wasn't a lot of complimenting. There wasn't a lot of any of that feminine energy, so to speak. And I didn't really even have any of that until, I got married and my wife started, teaching me how to do that. And then some of it came natural with just having kids, right? But nonetheless, I always yearned to be more complimentary. And I always learned to be more assertive in appreciation. And I wanted it to be natural. And I give an example. I have a sister-in-law that is always like, wow, that's good. I love your shoes. I love this. You're so good at this. And it's like throughout the day, she'll hit you with like 3 compliments. And then you feel like, damn, I need to start dishing some back, but I'm just not comfortable with it. It just was very hard for me. I didn't want to compliment women because I didn't want them to think that I was trying to pick them up. And I didn't want to compliment guys because, I thought they might think I'm doing the same or whatever. I just didn't know how to do it, and I had these fake, incorrect reasons for it. And so Liz said, okay, we're going to fix that.
And so what we decided to do is do a 21-day challenge where we were looking at kind of what are some of the rewards and consequences that we might set up and put into action some behavioral change around these goals, right? So the goal is to give these assertive appreciation and compliments. And so we decided to kind of create this, created it for 21 days and held Pat accountable to it. And so I think it's more enjoyable for him to tell you a little bit about what were some of the consequences in case Pat didn't do the homework because he hadn't been doing it. So that there was a consequence and a reward if you did it for 21 days. Tell them why Bret Michaels is here on stage.
So she's like, who do you hate? And I said, I hate this motherfucker, Bret Michaels. I don't understand. I don't know why. I really got mad because he was in like a motorcycle accident and then they took a fucking picture of him in his hospital bed and he had that bandana on. It didn't make any sense. The guy had all kinds of tubes coming out of him and I'm like, and he put a bandana on. I'm like, that is the stupidest thing. And I hate Poison. I hate everything about him. And I'm like, whatever. And then Tim Rhodes signed me up for the fan club and it just... oh man, I was fired up. I knew he did it. He still to this day won't admit it. But I don't know what it is about this clown, but I was
a little surprised, but I was going along for the ride. I'm like, okay.
So then she found a Bret Michaels fan club that I would give $10,000.
$10,000 if he didn't do
that ain't happening.
A compliment every day for 21 days. Did you rise? Oh, and then my reward. So $500. That's all he said. $500 for a Stitch Fix.
Yeah,
but you're wearing Stitch Fix.
I have enough money, so yeah.
Head
so
to
this
toe.
is all Stitch Fix. This purple, gray, my new shoes. Like part of my feminine energy is I'm gaining style. I'm learning about style. No, that's not.
I told him. I said tonight we should have the bandana on our heads. Like I was like, people would be like, "Why do you have a bandana?"
No style.
That's so funny.
Look at that blonde hair.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so moving on. The consequence was $10,000. You weren't willing to take that, and so more importantly, you were able to go through that every day for 21 days. And prior to our work on that, the idea of giving a compliment, I remember you even saying you had like a physical reaction, your body, like a pit in your stomach.
I didn't think, I was really doing it because I didn't want to give any money to the fan club, and I also wanted to do my homework, and in the indirect result is like literally, like I would like think at like 3 in the afternoon, oh, I haven't given any compliments yet. And then I'd find somebody. I have to go into Starbucks, and I'd give out like 3 compliments or whatever. And like literally, like people would just be like, oh, thank you. You know?
Yeah.
That's so, thank you, you know? And at like 8 or 9 o'clock, I would just like have this like release of just good feelings. I just started feeling better. And it's like, well, I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
But like if I go through life and I'm just throwing out compliments, it just makes me feel better. It's like an indirect thing. I can't explain unless you try it, but it's like, wow, I felt better. And that wasn't the point.
Yeah, so try it. It's great, right? It's a great way to communicate because when we show up and we're giving, I know there's a lot about gratitude and affirmation. I think there's a lot of research and good work around it. There's something about being able to vocalize it, put into words, and look at another human being and say, I appreciate you, or I appreciate something you did for me, right? There's power in that eye contact and making a genuine connection. So that's how we kind of work on ways to reduce those unknown parts. You're unknown, you didn't know how you'd feel, but you sure had a pretty negative narrative around what might happen, the fear around that. But then getting into that practice, thank you, Brett Michaels, for that.
Yeah, I didn't know, and then now I know. Now I know.
Yeah, so now we
feels good.
see the shift here, right? So we get to see this Jahari window and that open window pane. It's expanding, the unknown is shrinking, the blind spots are shrinking. The facade has just taken a different shape. It's still there, right? And so the facade is just as big as it was before in that hidden area. So that's the last area we're going to look at. Some of the ways that we reduce the facade or the hidden area are through self-disclosure. So self-disclosure is really any information about the self that you purposefully communicate to another person. I'm going to emphasize the word purposefully. So we cannot not communicate. We're communicating with our clothing, we communicate with our eye contact, we communicate. It's so nuanced. It's a skill that we use every single day of our lives, but it's not a skill that we necessarily sharpen, right? So when we think of communication, sometimes we think of a communication coach or a speech coach for stage. But really where communication happens is in our everyday interactions, right? So what we're looking at is self-disclosure. You're purposely sharing information about yourself. The reality is that can feel really vulnerable. Some of the reasons it can feel vulnerable, like you shared, trying to impress a client or trying to keep business, how will I be perceived by other people? And so that can be really kind of a scary. The idea for you is kind of scary to think about that work around that hidden area and that facade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was and sometimes there are negative consequences to being vulnerable, but.
Yeah, but not with the right target audience. So we're going to look at that. So one of the ways we're going to do that is just by a little activity. So we're going to get you involved here in a second. So I want you to be thinking about, we're going to share in a moment the game, an icebreaker, 2 truths and a lie. You all have played that before, right?
Who's played 2 Truths and a Lie before?
Yeah, familiar with it? Okay.
And we want you to play it with somebody you haven't talked to yet.
Yeah.
A face here you haven't talked to yet.
Yeah, and so kind of to model it, I'm going to share I'm going to share 2 truths and a lie about myself, and then I think we have
Wait a
an
minute.
interactive.
I forgot to do this. Everybody grab their phone. There's an app called Slido, S-L-I-D-O.
There you go.
S-L-I-D-O. And open it up. Let me know when you got it open. Oh, you need a QR code. Sorry. Where's the QR
there you
code?
go.
Hit that QR code.
QR code on some tables back here, also up on the screen.
QR code right here. Everybody
Look
hit
at
that
you, Matt.
QR code and get the Slido, because what it does is it's going to show in real time the results of this survey. And then we're going to use this throughout the week, so you'll still use it. It's kind of cool. And this way everybody could log in their answers. And it should take you to 1918614. Is everybody there?
Table 20's here.
Oh, big.
Table 20's got it all down.
Too many people doing it at once, maybe?
You guys good?
We can.
Big quiet group. It's good.
All right, let's go.
All right, we're going to go ahead into it. Hopefully it'll download and you could vote on which you think is the real Liz. Go ahead.
Okay, so 2 truths and a lie, and you're going to guess which one you think is a lie for me. So I have a motorcycle Class M1 license, or while visiting Scotland, I had a run-in with law enforcement, or I was a college athlete. So now
you want the lie.
You're trying to figure out
Everybody
which
vote.
is the lie about me.
Let's vote on the lie. Can we show the screen of the results
Oh.
live as it goes? Here it goes. So C is I was a college athlete is a lie.
Wow.
Oh shit!
I'm like disappointed here. Wow.
Where is the lie?
Oh my goodness.
So right now everyone still thinks you're lying about your college career. B's gaining traction. I feel like Jeff Prost. A is going.
I think it's
still
every-
is C. B. Has everybody voted?
Oh, good.
So
I like
everybody
somebody
doesn't think you're a college athlete.
Well, I'm not a college athlete anymore. I haven't been in
You
college
were
for
a
a long
college.
time. So you're accurate about that. Yes. I was a college athlete. I played volleyball in college, so that's wrong. That's truthful. Okay, so what's the next one? The next.
So B is while visiting.
So-
well, wait a minute. So they believe that. So A, yeah. Anyways, so
Okay,
we
so
know
A-
C is the truth, and then the second one is I have a motorcycle license.
Yeah, so between the two, what was the results of that?
Put it back.
Which one do they think is a lie?
They think that your
One of
college
them-
athlete
one of them is a lie.
42%.
So most.
Now 36% are saying that you don't have a motorcycle
No,
license.
they're saying they think, oh, that's a lie.
Yeah, that's a lie.
Okay, it's a lie. Yeah,
All right. 37% of you guys are right.
you get a bonus.
The
Okay,
rest
now,
63 got it wrong.
yeah. The run-in with law enforcement was just a parking ticket, so it wasn't that exciting, but it was still
From a
technically.
bobby.
All right, so now
So
you're going to
anyways.
explain for,
So everybody know how to do this. You're going to get with one person you don't know. You're going to stand up, get with that one person you know. You're going to tell them 2 things that are true about you and 1 lie, and they got to guess which one it is the lie.
yeah, so take
Ready?
a minute to think about it, and then.
Does that make
find
sense? They got to guess which lie. So come up with 2 truths about you and 1 lie. Okay? Has everybody got this? All right, everybody stand up. Find somebody really quick. Tell them 2 truths and 1 lie. 2 truths and 1 lie. And then after you tell them, let's see, people are texting me. Couldn't hear anything. No one can hear anything.
Can they hear? Oh, your family? Oh, I'm so glad we're not mic'd right now. Okay, so.
No sound at all.
Oh, no.
Hopefully they recorded it.
Do you, Okay, so in a few minutes we'll get back and we'll talk to them about like that's a low risk self-disclosure, but that's one way. Like once you start knowing something about someone, then you're shrinking that window pane. And then I know, Pat, that you've been doing a lot of work, and we'll talk about that, and then I'll let you talk, okay? They're used to so many more interactive activities, huh?
What?
That was like a lot of talking for them. They're like, that'll be good. Dr. Kelly will bring that.
Tell them to switch. All right, now switch. Everybody switch. Go to the next person. Go to the next person.
Yeah.
What's the purpose?
Yeah, we'll talk
To
about
learn
that.
about the person.
Like, so why the lie?
Just to so they pay attention to you.
Yeah, it's just a way to like engage someone, right?
you
in the
learn about
interaction,
them.
like.
Hopefully you told them some
Yeah,
good shit,
yeah.
like, rather than...
Yeah, it was hard.
What was
Your
yours?
shoe
Bring it.
size.
Tell me.
What was my what?
Your 2 truths and a lie.
I said I'm a fighter, I'm a doctor, and I'm single.
You're a fighter, a what?
A doctor and I'm single.
A fighter, a doctor, and you're single. Let me see your left hand. Let me see your hand.
Yeah, his hand is in his pocket.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Married 14 years,
I love it.
so that was a lot. But I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
That's awesome.
And I've been doing like, I did MMA for years, and then I have a doctor.
That's great. Awesome.
Those are good.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to come back and ask that. That was such a good question. It's nice kind of having those questions too.
Yeah. All right, when you're done, sit down so we know you're done.
All right. Hey
When you're
guys.
done, sit down.
Hey guys. Hey, it's time to sit down.
When you're done, sit down.
Stop chitter chatting.
All right, everybody sit down. Sit down.
It's time to sit down, everyone.
It's time to sit down.
You're telling a whole lot more lies.
I'll let Pat make that call. So someone came up here and had a really great question, which is a nice transition. They said, you know, what's kind of underlying that activity? One of the things that's kind of a low risk icebreaker, self-disclosure, right? You're sharing information about yourself. But in that process, when we share information about ourselves purposely, we can connect to others, right? And so that's where we see a lot of the health benefits too, is deeper connections with ourselves, self-awareness, but then also connecting with others. It makes you ask things you know about me now, like, oh, you've been to Scotland, right? So if we have dinner, you can say, oh, you've been to Scotland, I've been to Scotland, where have you been? So it allows for a deeper connection with human beings that we wouldn't otherwise get when we can self-disclose. So that's kind of the activities to help you, maybe even at your dinner tables tonight, to be able to share some of these truths with one another to see how we can have deeper connection. So we know that that's an area that we use and a strategy we can use to reduce that, that facade or that hidden window pane, that last section for the Jahari window, to get that large open window. And Pat, one of the areas we've really been looking to is exploring how big that hidden and that facade area has been. And so in the last year, we've been working together, and there was something that you felt like you felt comfortable sharing with this group as a...
Yeah, so for most of my life, I have had a facade around something that I really haven't shared with more than like 10 people. And that is, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I have OCD, basically clinically diagnosed. I take medicine for it. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And basically what it does is I get thoughts in my head, and they become like these huge cannonballs that bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think about them when I go to bed, and then I wake up the next morning, or I wake up in the middle of the night to pee, and I think about them, and then I wake up the next morning and think about them. And instead of being small, they're really big. And they just, a lot of times they're not even my thoughts. They're unwanted. They're some other guy's thoughts. They're the opposite of my thoughts. And at the end of the day, I just want them to stop. And I can't control it. It's like Tourette's or, Parkinson's. It's a spasm. Instead of it happening in my arm, it's happening in my head. And I feel like there's a shame around it that is not worthy of being a shame. It's not logical, but our society shames people for having mental illness when you don't really get shamed for having Parkinson's or Tourette's, but it's the same thing. And there's also a shame around taking medicine for it, because I think, like in a lot in our community, they're like, just take a fucking cold plunge or meditate or do yoga or whatever. And at the end of the day, all that stuff helps a little bit, but it doesn't make them stop. It doesn't. It's like it just doesn't. And it was important for me to share this because I know I've in the last couple of years, a couple of GoBros have written some things on Facebook, and I've actually had a conversation with 3 of you guys in the last maybe 18 months where you or someone in your family is dealing with something similar, and I wanted you to know that it's not something that we can control. And I think that from the outside, as a father or a husband, you think that this person can control it, and it's important for you to understand you can't control it. I wish I could control it, but I can't control it. The only way I can control it is with medication. And so that's it. I just wanted to disclose that. I wanted to get rid of that. I've been carrying it around. I've struggled with it since I was 19 years old. It comes in, it comes out. I can go 5 years without having any problems, and then I can get stressed about something and it won't go away. So I just wanted to, I didn't want to carry it around anymore. And I felt like there's a time in our society where it's okay and it's not, in the past I felt like if I say something, it's going to be used against me. And I don't feel like, I hope that's not the case, but I don't feel like that anymore. I hope that there's some people out there that I could help, and if not them, maybe their kids or their, whoever, somebody.
I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage, and I think one of the reasons that you mentioned us doing this more as like this style and having us have that connection. One of the things in that documentary too was just the person. It happened to be Jonah Hill's therapist. I'm not a therapist, but a coach. That they were impacted by their courage too, and your willingness to share that with all these gentlemen as like such a gift. I think to share that part of yourself with them, and certainly has been a gift in my own life, to get to know you better and to have the honor of being able to see you grow. Like, it makes me a better human being as a result of that. And so I just want to thank you for that. And I also want to just ask you, as we're here, sorry, you can pause for that. This was scary. This was scary. When we talked a week and a half ago, you weren't sure. You shared it with me that you were going to share. But even last night at dinner, I said, it's okay if you don't, right? It's something you decided you wanted to share. How are you feeling right now?
Sick.
Are you?
Sick, yeah.
Like
But
it? Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I hear that, friend. Yeah.
Hey, Pat.
I'll stand up for that, too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, Pat, this is Tim. I just wanted to say this was awesome of you to do this. I think when we share true vulnerability, true transparency, we all learn from it. And I think it was really brave of you to do this. And as your peer partner and buddy, I commend you, man. Way to go, Pat.
Thanks, buddy. I love you.
So one of the things we talked about, right, is just to kind of show that visual. You talked about the idea of wanting to show that evolution that you've made, and that we kind of did that before the Jahari window, and then just kind of also looking at that connection and the courage it takes to do that. It's not always easy for us to expand those areas, and I think the work that you've done and the tips that we've done a lot of work together in the last year. And I think the things that you decided to share as a gift to other people were really courageous and just a great example of what it means to be holistically, like the pillars that are existing for GoBundance, right? I mean, we talk about our health, we talk about our physical health, our mental health, but our communication, our interaction with other people. So I just, I'm so honored to be a part of a small part of this journey with you and to be able to be here with everyone else. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, a year and a half ago or so, in working with Dr. Kelly, I mean, just to give you an idea of where my mind has shifted with regards to this facade part, and this is that a GoBro, he may be here, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. Put something on Facebook, and I was like, you know, I can help this. I can help this guy. And I was talking with Dr. Kelly, and I didn't want to do it because I really had only told like 5 people, maybe 7. And I was in a leadership position or whatever, and I just felt 10 reasons why I shouldn't do it. And it took like several sessions with him to figure out what I was going to say. And so the reason I tell you that, and I did call him, and we had a good conversation. And then after that, 2 more people put stuff not, you know, necessarily about them, but you know, about their kids or spouses. And it was easier for me to call them and say, look, I'm not going to put this on Facebook, but this is what I struggle with, and you need to know that this is what your son is struggling with. And the reason I say that is because a year and a half I wasn't, you know, I was like very far. It took 3 sessions to come up with like, when I'm going to say this, one GoBro. And now I've released it here to, you know, 240 people. So it's just progress I made, I guess. Now my facade, that facade's even, really I'm not going to have much left in there.
I love that. It's hard work, but the benefits of it are so profound. So thank you for that. And I think we talked about possibly opening up for questions
Sure.
and answers. And yeah, so I don't know if
Yeah,
that
let's
looks-
do it right here.
Hey, thanks for sharing. That was awesome. I have a little twist on the facade box and a question for you.
Yeah.
So that, to me, I'm thinking about the facade, and I'm thinking there might be 2 components to the facade. One being something that you can change, or maybe you want to change.
Sure.
And then the other one being something that you can't change. So Pat kind of talked about something that maybe he can't change, maybe to a degree, you know, stress is factoring in, he mentioned, and disclosure helps, whatever. He doesn't maybe want that to be a part of him, but it is a part of him, maybe can't change it. I've had more things in my life that I was ashamed of because I was doing things that I didn't want to do. And so decreasing the facade, in my opinion, then could come in 2 ways. Disclosure is one way to reduce that kind of facade that Pat's talking about, but then The other one is changing yourself and eliminating those things from your life that you no longer want to be a part of yourself. Have you, when you coach people and use this window, have you had any examples of that or any ways that we can kind of do that outside of just disclosure, but actually eliminating things from our lives?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think what these researchers are talking about with the Jahari window, that particular hidden facade area, is what's known to us, but not known to other people, right? So what I hear you saying is this idea of what are some things that we can change about ourselves, and then is the second part of that we change it and we have behavioral change so we no longer, it's no longer in that hidden pain? Is that what you mean? So it would still be, yeah, so it doesn't exist anymore. So what these researchers, yeah, perfect.
If somebody has a pornography addiction,
Yeah,
and they don't want to have that, and most people don't know about it,
sure,
that was a big part of my life
yeah,
at one point. Or even a sexual addiction to like just sex
yeah,
that they're ashamed about.
yeah.
So you would disclose it,
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's the great thing too, is that what you're saying is like, okay, so what?
just like you did.
Yeah, and even if there was like a recovery program like sex, love, and addiction or something like that, a program you were in, even though it's a behavioral change or something you're working on, we also know that some of those things can easily come back into our lives, right? And so sometimes we can create that facade where we're having behavioral change, but we still feel shame because we don't feel comfortable sharing it with other people, if that makes sense. So you might be taking actions to change it, but there's still really, there's a lot of power in being able to share that, because sometimes what can happen to our intrapersonal communication, our thoughts that we have with ourselves, can sometimes be the most dangerous, well, those words and thoughts. So if we have that facade up so much, it might be something we're working on, but even the research shows sharing that, hey, this is something I'm working on, right? Or this is a past struggle of mine. So sometimes it can be historically. There's still that intentional self-disclosure can be significant health benefits, psychological benefits, and relief from that. Did that answer that question? Cool. I like it. Hopefully I'll see y'all snap later. That was great.
Is this thing on? Yeah. Hey, Pat, thank you for sharing. Man,
Yeah.
that's incredible. So I'm a fixer,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, like, yeah.
I was like, I know like a lot of, there's some
so
similarities.
my wife and I, we always like,
Yeah.
relationship is something I'm trying to really improve, and she starts talking about her problems, and I have this like angst that builds up inside me because I know the answer.
Y'all know the answer.
Like
don't you?
it's and like
Yeah.
and I'm trying not to blurt it out and say, well, why don't you just talk to this person? Why don't you do this? But eventually, like I don't know how to like change that urge to like just.
Yeah.
And then once I said, like, stop trying to fix my problems. I'm just venting, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I don't know. It's just really
Yeah.
frustrating because we have this communication block, and
Sure.
it's becoming a point where it's stopping our relationship from progressing
Yeah.
to the point where I want it to be, and it's, yeah. So is there any advice for that?
Absolutely. So what we did not have time for is, these are just a couple techniques. We've worked on a lot of techniques. So I work on emotional intelligence, listening. So I help write part of a textbook for all around listening. So Kevin, when I think your question is about, oftentimes, we didn't get to this slide, but there is a slide I created. It's called, I would recommend looking up Julian Treasure. He's a listening and sound expert, and there is a really quick 7-minute TED Talk that I think is really a great takeaway that you can have. And he talks about this word rasa, R-A-S-A, and it means when you're in a listening position, you receive it, you appreciate, you show appreciation. That doesn't always have to be, I appreciate what you said. It could just be a nodding the head or showing appreciation. And then you want to summarize. When you're summarizing, you don't want to parrot back what someone says. What I hear you saying, wife. I mean, like, you don't want to, that's going to be condescending. It's not going to come off right.
Sort of like fairy script.
Right, yeah. It's more about the emotions. So when we look at communication, there's 2 dimensions to it. There's this upper, like the tip of the iceberg, which a lot of us live in, right? You said, I know the problem before she even says it. No, you don't. Because oftentimes it has nothing to do with, how many of you have had your wives or significant others where they say something or they're like, da, 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 and you're like, this is the solution, I know the solution. And they're like, no, No, you're not listening to me. Right? Like, it doesn't have to do, it's the underlying emotion. I don't feel loved. I don't feel seen, right? They want a connection. So what, on the listening, if you think of listening as a continuum, many of you in this room, most of my clients on one end of the continuum for listening, task-oriented listeners. You got a job? I got the task. I know how to solve a problem. Here's the deal. If you think of a continuum, here's task-oriented listener, here's relational. Think of who your target audience is. Task-oriented listening works really well in the business world. It does not work so well in your interpersonal relationships. You need to know how to move the continuum. That's what a competent master communicator can say. Who's my target audience? It's not about the dishes being done wrong, I promise you. It's about her saying to you, this is the way I want the dishes done. And you're like, who the fuck cares if this knife is up or down or right? But what it is she's saying when you don't put the knife up or down or the cup or the way she wants it or whatever, what she's saying is, I don't feel loved. Okay, it's the mugs in the top rack. How did I know?
On the bottom.
What she's saying to you, it's the emotion underneath the iceberg. I don't feel loved. I've asked you this. I don't feel seen. I don't feel appreciated. Right? So there's something deeper there. So stay in the moment, right? Appreciate that. Like, think about the fact that this is a wife you've chosen to spend your life with, right? You're going to dedicate every day to doing health and fitness. Stay in that moment with her where you can say, I see you. Even if she spends a half an hour talking about the details of someone's dress. Because that's going to drive you crazy.
It takes work.
It works.
Long work in the back.
I just got done with FanBundance with Dr. Kelly Flanagan. Where are you? Way in the back room. And he said something that touched on this about holding space for our family. And it says, and I'll read this because this comes from this man. What does holding space mean? To fully experience something before acting upon it. To hold space regardless what other person is bringing to you. To hold space for other people, we must first be able to hold space for ourselves. Sometimes what they want us to do is just hold space for them. And just be present and not respond, not react, patiently drawing from that moment. But I think we're all fixers. We all want to do things like that. That's something that a flaw in our families, in our relationships. And hopefully Dr. Kelly Flanagan touches on that during his session, but it's holding space. So.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you adding that.
All right, one more question.
Wait a minute. He's been waiting for like an hour back there.
All right, 2 more questions. We'll go you, and then we'll go him.
Pat, I wanted to know, what would you say has been the greatest benefit or change that working on these different areas has generated in you?
I just feel better, I just feel better about myself. I feel like I had feminine energy and creativity and in stuff kind of inside me all along, but I suppressed it because I could make money with the masculine energy, and I could get a lot of recognition with the masculine energy, and I could, I get a lot of dopamine with the masculine energy. But what you don't get, there's a difference between serotonin and dopamine. Dopamine is like makes you feel good right then. Serotonin is like, I'm at peace, everything is cool, there's no problems, you know what I mean? I got it under control. So I think you get a lot of that dopamine, you can live off that dopamine, but what this has done for me, it's built serotonin, and it's like by just making people smile at me and with me and speaking to my kids better and speaking to my wife better and just being a better communicator, it just made things better in my life, at the end of the day. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's what it's done. It has a very indirect reaction to it,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Pat and Liz, thank you for this excellent session. I wanted to talk about blind spot. And once you have this awareness of your blind spots, specifically from your family, and hearing what they had to say about you, the good and the bad, obviously that's something that's like, wow, hearing it from your family, they love you, but they're also telling you what's wrong, or the things that they see, and of course they love you, but these are the things that you need to improve. So I'm curious, once you heard about your blind spots, and you took time to actually reflect on it, what did you do, and how did you work with your family to identify them together and to effectuate the change, to reduce those blind spots?
Well, the good part is, like, Liz gives homework. You know, it's not like a traditional therapy session or whatever where you just get the information. That's kind of why it's like Stutz. It's like you have homework between, you know, one session and the next. And some of the homework was like I wrote letters to both of my daughters twice. I've written letters and notes to my wife. What else did I do?
Well, we did a lot of like tracking behavioral wins, right? So noting when something worked well and when it didn't,
Right.
and then we would circle back. We talked about relational maintenance.
Text me that you did this,
Right.
you know, every day this week. Whatever we were working on, right? And so yeah. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And it brought this knowledge. Like we were in Glacier National Park. I was with my two daughters, and we'd go hiking together. And you know, my daughter was talking, and I saw a really cool house. I'm a real estate guy. I was like, wow, look at that house. That's awesome. And she was like, really? Like, it totally interrupted her. Like, I mean, she was telling a story, you know? And I was like, damn, that's what I learned. But I don't think I would have normally noticed that I did that. But just being conscious and working on it with Liz, I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. Keep going. Finish the story. I apologize. So just, you know how it is. It's just working on anything, there's just things that you just see that before you didn't see.
It's just a level of mindfulness too. It's like
Yeah.
conscious communication, right? That's what you're working for, conscious communication. So it's not just mindless. This is a skill you use every single day throughout the day, and it's just not one that we really get sharpen the tools. So if we're using the wrong tool to fix the car, it's not gonna work so well. So I think you've done an excellent job of sharpening those tools, and I'm really proud of you.
That's awesome.
But before we give them a round of applause, let's get two people, appreciation, ahas, how this talk impacted your life. What will you do when you get home with it? Besides try to hire Liz and have a bunch of people fill out a survey about you, which is uncomfortable, Pat's right.
And I was like, thanks.
Yes.
All right, Matt here. I've known Pat for going on 9 years now. And seeing how he has continued to challenge himself is really inspiring, right? Like, to know that there is no end game in all of this. And so as honest and raw as you are with other people, I appreciate that you're as honest and raw with yourself. And I think that just creates space, whether you know it or not, for other people to get in there and do the work, brother.
So good, yeah.
Thanks, Matty. Love you, bud.
And I already had my moment, but I'm going to take it again. I'm over here, Matt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got two in the back. You and then.
Okay. You know, one of the things you said that I know you've worked on a lot with Pat and with me too is the conscious communication part of it, because we are who we are. We've got these railroads and we put a train on it and it is just going. And that conscious part of that never-ending journey of trying to improve and learning to ask better questions and then listening to the questions before you respond. I'm good at raw, right? Resonate, yep. And then, so it's this constant journey that you've helped Pat and I both with, that I think all of us here need to be more intentional about not just saying what we always say because we've always said it, but intentionally trying to improve our language and our communication with everybody around us, because that's what we're all here to do, is just improve all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Aaron. Last one.
Aaron.
Yeah, I'd like to share just more gratitude to Pat showing leadership in this room and being vulnerable. There's a room full of leaders, and you know, Pat mentioned the stigma around the OCD and mental health in general, and that's still a big stigma in this country and in this world. Racial equality, gender equality, sexual preference equality, that's all come a long way, but I feel like mental health is still way behind. That's something I deal with in my relationship every day. I'm going to deal with it with my kids' relationships. I think everybody in this room has a loved one that is affected by mental health. So I
Yes.
encourage you all to show some leadership
Yes.
around mental health and champion that cause for everyone. Thank you.
Let's give them another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.